Hi there, and welcome to this fifth video in the series of Permission to Be You. And I want to talk a little bit today about this point on the roadmap here, where it says it's time to stop worrying about what others think and live your life. And of course that overlaps with some of the things that we've spoken about already, but I just want to speak particularly about that one, because I think in my experience that's huge for most people, and some bits of it are kind of obvious to us and some bits of it are less obvious to us. So I wonder to what extent you see yourself not doing things or stopping yourself doing things or doing things differently because of what you think other people will think or say. So the first and kind of most obvious thing about that is that we don't actually know what other people think. Now we have some insight into it, don't we? We know what people have said in the past. We know what the sort of things that certain people think and say, but we don't actually know what's going to happen next time, this time. And I would really like to feel that people gave me a chance to respond differently and to be different. But I think quite often I don't give people that chance because I've already decided what I know they're going to say before they've even said it. And I then react accordingly or act accordingly. And, you know, when you think about that doesn't make any sense at all, really. Because, you know, what I notice more and more is a world where people are doing or not doing because of what somebody else may or may not do, and that other person's doing or not doing because of what somebody else may not do. And so and there's this kind of huge knock-on effect of us all second guessing each other and then acting accordingly. And it seems to me like a whole load of kind of murky water that if all that cleared and we could just do what we wanted to do or ask the other person what they thought about it, if that really made a difference. But what if we just it didn't actually matter, because in many cases it doesn't really matter what other people think, but we act as if it does. So for example, we decide, we have an idea, we think, oh, I'd quite like to do this. And then we start to think, well, what will other people say? And alongside that often then comes the, who am I to do this? Or who am I to create this thing or carry out this idea? And, so that thinking of who am I to do it, that to me is very much based on what will people say? Who am I to do it? Well, if you were the only person on earth, you wouldn't be asking yourself that question. It's who am I is something that actually comes from other people. It's a sort of from the experience of possibly in the past having heard people saying, well, who are you to do that? Or who is she to do that? Why is she doing that thing? And so the assumption in that is that it matters if people don't approve of what we do or don't like what we do or ask that question, who is she to do that, or thinks maybe we shouldn't be doing that. But is that true? Does it matter? And what I notice in that is that we can end up living not only within our own limited thinking, but the moment we try and break out of our limited thinking, we sort of immediately come up against everyone else's limited thinking or what we perceive it to be. So maybe some of those other people are thinking or even saying, who is she to do that? Why is she doing that thing? She shouldn't be doing that thing. But that's coming from their limited thinking about what's possible. Now, if we then buy into that and say, oh yeah, you think I shouldn't be doing that, therefore I won't, we've just, we've just broken out of our own thinking, only to be immediately limited by somebody else's. What's the point of that? What if people, if most people are living within, well, we're all living within a limit of thinking, and for many of us it's really quite tightly prescribed. And if we aren't prepared to look beyond that and to say, well, you think that's not possible, you don't think it's a good idea, but I'm just going to give it a go. I'm just going to give it a go. A good example of this, actually, I think, is my Nepal trek that I'm organising, because I had that idea and it just sounded like an amazing idea to me, and I thought it could work. And the moment I started talking to my husband about it, he put up, maybe objections is too strong a word, but he put in all the kind of reasons why it might not work, and why and questions about how that could really be possible, and and is it just going to end up being a very expensive holiday, and all this kind of stuff. And I really struggled at various points with that, because it felt quite real. It felt like it might not work. I didn't know if it was going to work, but I really wanted to give it a go. And there were points where I was really struggling against that, what other people think, what he thought. Because for a long time, I think, even after we'd had those initial conversations and I was going ahead with it, so I sort of struggled against it, and I decided, I'm going to go ahead with this anyway. I'm going to go ahead with it. And of course, I was lucky because I had Jeannie, who was really enthusiastic, organising it with me and encouraging me. So we just kept going and we kept going, and there were periods where it looked like maybe it wasn't going to work. But now we're at the point where it's happening, where we've booked our flights, where we're not going to be out of pocket. We're actually going to be able to make some money out of it, which is, what was needed for it to be able to go ahead, really. And it hasn't been a smooth ride all the way, and I have really been pushing against that, what other people think. And it looked very, very real, the the objections and the questions and the my husband never said, who are you to do that, but it was order of kind of question, like, well, how can that work? You've never done anything like that before. Why should people want to come on something with you? Because you've never done anything, all those kind of things. And when he said that to me, I felt it. I was like, oh yeah, maybe he's right. Maybe people won't, maybe, all of that. And somehow what I've learned recently just helped me to see that I didn't need to listen to all of that. And I just kept going. And it wasn't always easy. And there were tears along the way. And there was me going to Jeannie, I don't know if I can do this. But here we are. So it was worth it. It could so easily have stood in my way, and it didn't. So that's just an example of how what other people think can so easily get in our way. And just one other thing to add to that is that point about, I think I sent you before, the Marianne Williamson quote about I'm just looking at it above my desk here, as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. And I have seen that as well in my experience of organising this trek, and various other things I've done in my business, that I've seen people I've heard people saying to me, wow, that's brave, or why, almost like the opposite of, who are you to do that? Wow, you're doing that thing. Like, how are you doing that? And when people start seeing that and saying that, wow, how are you making that happen? How did you do that? For me, that feeds back to them kind of going, well, what could I do something like that? what could I do that's similar? So I think that is a really important kind of knock-on of that, starting to not allow what we think other people think to get in the way. There's something else I wanted to say about this worrying or thinking or considering, over consideration of what other people think. And this is a really good example of this is one of my clients who's a young girl. She's 17 years old, and she's had anorexia. She's not anorexic anymore, but she's got real kind of self-image issues. And so she's totally 100% convinced that she is unattractive and that she's overweight. She's absolutely neither of those things. It's, you know, completely obvious to everybody else that she's a really lovely, pretty girl, and she's slim and attractive. So, you know, that's what I perceive to be reality. She sees it very, very differently. And when I kind of have talked to her about that, this thing about what other people think is huge in that, because she feels that if she feels she's attractive, then and other people might not, or obviously they don't because she knows she isn't, but other people won't. And so she's then being kind of unrealistic. So she feels like it's like a race to the bottom. So she feels if she thinks the worst possible thing about herself, like she's no good, she's not somebody that people want to be friends with, although actually that's one that she's kind of let go of now, and she's seeing that very differently, but that she's unattractive and nobody could think she was pretty and nobody could think that she looked right. If she believes that, then nobody can shock her with a criticism. So if she believes the worst thing about herself, I'm ugly, I'm unattractive, I'm horrible, then nobody can say, oh, you're unattractive. She's like, oh yeah, I know that already. So I think I can really see aspects in which I've done that, not in that arena, but I've done that to myself as well. It's that kind of, well, if I know I'm not really that good at something, then nobody can surprise me by telling me that I'm no good at it. But you can see how, you know, how incredibly limiting that is, because you're just stuck with this, I've always got to believe the worst thing about myself. Now, given that there are people out there who will always have a range of opinions about us, who think we're amazing, who think we're okay, and who think we're awful, and about all different aspects of ourselves, who think we're gorgeously attractive, who think we're average, who think we're hideous. You know, there's probably people out there that feel all, you know, the whole range. So why does she have to pitch it right down at the bottom? Because people are going to surprise her either way. So she could say, I think I'm absolutely lovely and attractive, and people would still surprise her. People would agree with her, and people would not agree with her. So there'd be some people who'd kind of you know, say, well, no, you're not. But the question then is, why does that matter? So she's feeling like, I don't want anybody to be able to say something that catches me out. Well, actually, people are saying that because they're surprising her by saying, no, but you're lovely. But she's just like, well, that's obviously rubbish. But why couldn't that work the other way around? Why can't she think she's gorgeously attractive, and some people be saying, no, you're not, you're hideous, and her be thinking, well, obviously you're wrong. It's just made up, isn't it? Can you see how she's just completely made that up? She's decided, I've got to think this, and everyone else may think better than that, but I don't believe them anyway. But she could say, I think I'm great, and everyone else may think the opposite, but they're wrong anyway. So this kind of, it's the putting, you know, I've just kind of seen something there that I haven't really seen it that way before, that it's like we put value on what other people think and think it really, really matters. but actually only certain things. So for her, she puts real value on other people thinking that if other people think she's no good, she's like, oh yes, that, you know, yes, I need to believe that. But if other people think she is good, anything positive about her, she can't believe that. So it, you know, it, to me, that just kind of reveals the totally made up nature of this whole thing, that we're reacting to something that A, we don't know what people really think, but B, even when we do, it's not true. It's just what people think. It's not the truth about us. And the truth about us is so rich and varied and dynamic, constantly changing, and not, you know, not something that you know, there's not a perfection. I think that's the other thing, that we have this kind of image of getting everything right, that there's a perfection that we have to be measuring up to, and that other people see us not measuring up to and judge us, and you know, and so we're constantly sort of scrabbling to be perfect. But what if we could just see ourselves in much more of a state of flux, and you know, dynamic and changing and just doing stuff, and that sometimes we get it right, and sometimes we, you know, by anyone's measure, we get it wrong. And so what? Then we can do something different. Then we adjust and we go ahead in a different way. But it's that feeling that it's got to be right, and other people have got to see that it's right all the time, that's actually just totally impossible to measure up to. So I hope that's been interesting. I feel I've kind of rambled because I've sort of seen things for myself as I've talked about that. So it'd be really interesting to hear what you've heard, and to talk a little bit more about that later in the week. But just have a think about, where are the areas where you really care about what other people think, and really it gets in your way. And also the areas where you just don't give a moment's thought to what other people think. You just don't take any notice of it, because there'll be plenty of those too. Another thing that I want to have a look at on our call today is just to go back to the list that you made in the first session about I think I'm stuck because, and just have a look at that and see if anything's starting to look different there. So I look forward to seeing you soon. Bye for now.